Dust filled his lungs, didn't matter, still breathing, he could take it. He'd learned these past weeks his body was tougher than he thought, way tougher. The tunnel had caved in, expected, with monsters tearing through it. Unexpected was how little he cared. Death held no fear, not anymore, only the mission. He pushed himself up, ignoring the searing pain in his side. Rocks, dust, and the stench of fear filled the air. But beneath it all, a faint heartbeat. Jivon. He was alive. That was all that mattered. The other trainees were in shock, faces pale. They stumbled out of the smaller tunnels, coughing, crying. Do-hyuk didn't blame them. This was their first taste of real danger.
We have to find Yuan.
His voice cut through the panic. He wasn't their leader, not officially, but they looked to him anyway. Good. Needed someone to take charge.
He's in there.
A girl pointed, tears streaming down her face at the massive pile of rubble blocking the main passage. No way Jiwon survived that, unless...
Everyone help me move these rocks.
He didn't wait for an answer, just started heaving rocks, each one twice his size. Didn't matter. He was running on adrenaline and something else. He could sense Jiwon. Not see him, not exactly. More like feeling. Their powers linked them somehow. Jiwon's life force flickering like a candle in the wind. He dug faster, ignoring the blood welling up on his palms. Each rock cleared brought him closer to that faint heartbeat, that fading light. Had to hurry. Every second counted.
He's alive.
Someone shouted, and Do-hyuk felt a surge of hope. They cleared the last of the debris, revealing Jiwon unconscious, pinned under a fallen beam. He wasn't alone. A monstrous spider larger than any Do-hyuk had ever seen lay dead beside him, its fangs sunk into the beam, protecting Jiwon from the full force of the collapse.
Help me lift this.
Do-hyuk roared, adrenaline surging through him. They needed to move fast. Jiwon was alive, but barely. He could feel it, the life draining out of him with each passing moment. The others hesitated, fear etched on their faces. The spider, though dead, was a terrifying sight. Do-hyuk didn't have time for their fear. He grabbed the beam, ignoring the splinters digging into his palms.
Now!
He roared, and with a surge of desperate strength they lifted the beam just enough for him to drag Jiwon free. He collapsed back, gasping for breath, the world spinning. He saw the fear in their eyes, felt their concern, but he couldn't focus on that. Jiwon was alive, but fading fast. He needed energy, and fast. His hand shot to the wound on his side, ripping away the makeshift bandage. He winced, but ignored the pain. It was a necessary pain, the price he had to pay. He pressed his hand against Jiwon's chest, channeling his own life force, the energy he drew from his wounds into his friend. A surge of power, dark and desperate, flowed from him. Jiwon gasped, his chest heaving as he drew in a shuddering breath. His eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain and confusion, but he was alive. Do-hyuk slumped back, his vision blurring. It was always like this. The more he used his power, the more it took from him. But he'd gladly give it all, if it meant saving his friend.
Get him to safety.
Do-hyuk rasped, his voice hoarse. He couldn't stand, not yet. But he didn't need to. The others were staring at him, a newfound respect in their eyes. They hesitated for a moment, then nodded, fear giving way to determination. They carefully lifted Jiwon, carrying him towards the exit, their steps lighter, their faces filled with a glimmer of hope. He watched them go, a weary smile playing on his lips. They were kids, thrown into a war they didn't understand, but they were learning, and he would be there to guide them, to protect them. That was his promise. The world tilted, and Do-hyuk let himself fall back into the dust. He was exhausted, his body screaming in protest. But he couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. He had to get them out of here. Had to make sure they all made it back alive. That was his burden to bear, his responsibility as their something. Leader, protector. He wasn't sure. But one thing he knew for sure. He wouldn't break. He couldn't. He had to be strong for Jiwon, for the others. He was their shield, their unbreakable wall. And he would stand firm, no matter what. He closed his eyes, drawing strength from the faint but steady heartbeat echoing in his ears. They were alive, and as long as they were breathing, so was he. The labyrinth had tested them, but it had also forged them. They would come out of this stronger, together, they had to.